Hi, boys. Welcome to another Daddy Cast with Exploring Insects, Week 11, the Fleece. And the picture that goes along with it is over here. As was agreed upon the day before, Jacques made ready for the performance. To keep the patients from moving, they were obliged to make them lie down, their feet tied between the two inclined planks of a rack. Steel knives shone on the ground. As for them, innocent victims of the needs of man, they were already bound and lying on their sides. With gentle resignation, they awaited their sad fates. Were they going to be slain? Oh no, they were to be shorn. Jacques took a sheep by its feet, placed it between the two planks of the rack, and with large scissors began crack, crack, crack to cut off the wool. Little by little, the fleece fell all in one piece. When the sheep had been despoiled, it ran free to one side, ashamed and chilly. It had just given its covering to clothe man. Jacques put another one on the rack, and the scissors began to move. Tell me, Jacques, said Jules, are not the sheep very cold when they have had their wool cut off? See how that one trembles that you have just shorn. Never mind that. I have chosen a fine day for it. The sun is warm. By tomorrow they won't feel the need of their wool. And besides, ought not the sheep to suffer a little cold so that we may be warm? We warm? How? You astonish me. You do not know that? You who read so many books? Well, this is with this wool they will make you stockings and knitted things for this winter. They will even make cloth, fine cloth for clothes. Puh! Exclaimed Emile. This wool is too dirty and ugly to make stockings, knitted things, and cloth. Dirty at present, Jacques agreed, but it will be washed in the river, and when it has become very white, Mother Ambroisine will work it on her spinning wheel and make yarn of it. This yarn, knitted with needles, will become stockings that one is very glad to have on one's feet when obliged to run in the snow. I have never seen red, green, blue sheep, and yet there are red, green, blue, and other colored wools, said Emile. They dye the white wool that the sheep give us. They put it into boiling water with drugs and coloring matter, and it comes out of that water with a color that stays. And cloth. And cloth is made with threads of wool like those of stockings, but in order to weave these threads, make them cross each other regularly, and convert them into fabric, you must have complicated machines, weaving looms that cannot be had in our houses. These are only found in large factories used for manufacturing woolen goods. Then these trousers that I have on come from the sheep. This vest, my cravat, stockings too. I am dressed in the spoils of the sheep. This from Jules. Yes, to defend ourselves from the cold, we take the sheep's wool. The poor beast furnishes its fleece for our clothes, its milk and flesh for our nourishment, its skin for our gloves. We live on the life of our domestic animals. The ox gives us his strength, flesh, hide. The cow, besides, gives us milk. The donkey, mule, horse work for us. As soon as they are dead, they leave us their skin, of which we make leather for our shoes. The hen gives us eggs, the dog puts his intelligence at our service, and yet there are people who without any motive maltreat these animals, without which we would be so poor, who let them suffer hunger and beat them unmercifully. Never imitate those heartless ones. It would be an insult to God, who has given us the donkey, ox, sheep, and other animals. When I think that these valuable creatures give us all, even to their very life, I would share my last crust with them. And the shears, meanwhile, continued their crock, 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 and the fleece fell. These are carding combs that they used to, I don't know, do something to the wool to make it ready for spinning on a spinning wheel. And this is a loom that they would use to weave the threads of yarn, wool yarn, into cloth. Here's leaf and flower of a hemp plant. Flax and hemp. While listening to what Jacques was saying about wool, Emile examined his handkerchief attentively. He turned it over and over, felt it, then looked through it. Jacques foresaw the question Emile was getting ready to ask him, and he said, "Handkerchiefs and linens are not woolen. Certain plants, cotton, hemp, flax, and not sheep, furnish them. For you see, I don't know much about those things myself. I have heard tell of the cotton plant, but I have never seen it. And besides, I am afraid talking to you will make me cut the sheep's skin." In the evening, at Jules' request, they took up the history of the materials with which we clothe ourselves, and Uncle Paul explained their nature. The outside of hemp and flax is composed of long threads, very fine, supple, and tenacious, from which we manufacture our fabrics. We clothe ourselves with the spoils of the sheep. We make ourselves fine with the bark of the plant. The fabrics of luxury, cambric, tulle, gauze, point lace, Mechlin lace, are all made from flax. The stronger ones, even to coarse sacking, are of hemp. The cotton plant gives us the fabrics made of cotton. Flax is a slender plant with delicate blue flowers, and is sown and harvested every year. It is much cultivated in northern France, Belgium, and Holland. It is the first plant used by man for woven fabrics. Mummies of Egypt, the old land of Moses and the patriarchs, mummies which have lain buried for 4,000 years and more, are swathed in bands of linen. "Mummies, did you say?" interposed Jules. "I don't know what they are." "I will tell you, my dear child. Respect for the dead is found among all people and in all ages. Man regards as sacred what was the seat of a soul made in the image of God. He honors the dead, but the honors rendered differ according to time, place, customs. We inter the dead and put over the burial place a tombstone with an inscription, or at least a humble cross, divine emblem of life eternal. The ancients burned them on a funeral pyre. They piously gathered the bones bleached by the fire and enclosed them in priceless vases. In Egypt, to preserve the cherished remains for the family, they embalmed the dead. That is to say, they impregnated them with aromatics and swathed them in linen to prevent decomposition. These pious duties were so delicately performed that after centuries and centuries we find intact in their chests of sweet smelling wood, but dried and blackened by years, contemporaries of the ancient kings of Egypt or the pharaohs. These are what we call mummies. Hemp has been cultivated all over Europe for many centuries. It is an annual, of a strong, nauseous odor, with little green, dull looking flowers, whose stem, of the thickness of a quill pen, rises about 2 meters. It is cultivated like flax, both for its bark and for its grain, called hemp seed. "That is the grain, I think," said Emile, "we give the goldfinch, which it cracks with its beak when it breaks the shell to get out the little kernel." "Yes, hemp seed is the feast of little birds." Well, let's see, up here it says this is a flax plant. The bark of the hemp has not the fineness of flax. The fibers of this latter plant are so fine that 25 grams of tow spun on the spinning wheel furnishes a thread almost a league long. The spider's web alone can rival in delicacy certain linen fabrics. When hemp and flax reach maturity, they are harvested and the seeds are separated by threshing. The next operation, retting, then takes place, its purpose being to render the filaments of the bark, or the fibers as they are called, easily separable from the wood. These fibers, in fact, are pasted to the stem and stuck together by a gummy substance that is very resistant and prevents separation until it is destroyed by rot. They sometimes do this retting by spreading the plants in the field for a couple of weeks and turning them over now and then until the tow detaches itself from the woody part or hemp stalk. Here is a retting tank. It says this is the inlet. This is undisturbed water. These are bundles of flax. But the quickest way is to tie the flax and hemp in bundles and keep them submerged in a pond. There soon follows a rot, which gives out intolerable smells. The bark decays, and the fiber, endowed with exceptional resistance, is freed. Then the bundles are dried. After that, they crush them between the jaws of an instrument called a brake to crush the stems into small pieces and separate the tow. Finally, to purge the tow of all woody refuse and to divide it into the finest threads, they pass it between the iron teeth of a sort of big comb called a heckle. In this state, the fiber is spun either by hand or by machine. The thread obtained is ready for weaving. On a loom, they place in order side by side numerous threads composing what they call the warp. By turns, impelled by a pedal on which the operator's foot presses, one half of these threads descend while the other half ascend. At the same time, the operator passes a transverse thread in a shuttle from left to right, then from right to left. From this intercrossing comes the woven fabric, and it is finished. The garb of the plant has changed masters. The bark of the hemp has become cloth, that of flax a princely lace worth some hundreds of francs by the piece.